Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton. Sluncha!
Good day, Whiskey brothers, Whiskey sisters, Whiskey friends, and welcome to the Whiskey Book Club's Season 3 premiere with Lou, right here. Lou Bryson, the author of this book right here. It's called Whiskey Masterclass, the ultimate guide to understanding Scotch, Bourbon, Rye, my favorite, and more. And as always, I'm honored to have you, the viewer, with us today as well. There are other Whiskey Book Clubs out there right now, but none that delve so deeply into the subject with the author than we do right here. So my name's Dolph. I'm the president of the Alberta Scotch Study, founder of the Whiskey Book Club, and I'm your host tonight. And for those of you that are a little bit new to us, I'll explain just a wee bit what we're about. This is a home base, a safe place, really, for whiskey geeks that love to share a dram and share their passion for reading, and mostly about whiskey or whiskey-related activities. Now, this book right here, that one, is the 12th book reviewed on the Whiskey Book Club. And it's also the latest of Lou's 6 books. And Lou has a vast resume. And I told him that I was going to try to embarrass him just a wee little bit with the information. But he's an aficionado of my 2 favorite drinks, beer and whiskey. And he's the author of, and I've got some pictures here. So he's the author of this book right here, Tasting Whiskey.
Classic.
And 4 regional U.S. brewery books. And here's the 4 U.S. brewery books. And Lou, I don't know which one came out first, second, third, or fourth. Oh,
Pennsylvania Breweries was the first, and that was my real love. That's where I'm from.
Which one? Sorry, the Virginia?
Pennsylvania.
No, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the first one in love. Okay. And it says 4th edition on it. Are you still on the 4th edition, or are you way beyond that?
Oh, yeah, I stopped doing that. It's a young man's game.
Okay.
And
good.
I'm not a young man.
Oh, of course you are. Keep drinking beer and going from brewery to brewery, and yeah, it keeps us young. And you're on here every week, and I put Dr. Don on there because I get along well with Dr. Don, so I threw that out there. And some other stuff. So magazine editor for Whiskey Advocate for over 20 years, and I don't have anything for the Daily Beast, but you're a senior drinks writer for Bourbon Plus magazine, senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast. I love this, and I tried to find this online, a picture of your induction as a Kentucky Colonel. I wanted to see a ceremony somehow, but I didn't find
no ceremony. They just sent me a piece of paper.
Is it?
But it's okay. It's all right.
You deserve the ceremony. It's good. I like it. But this one as well. So you're an inaugural member of the Order of the Writ, and these are the founding members. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and they'll have to be in agreement with everyone so it has to be unanimous, be put into the Order of the Writ, which is all kind of cool. And what else do we have? And if you follow you on social media whatsoever, you see that you love the covered bridges, and we do. I see lots of covered bridges, and you know what? Until then, I really didn't even think about it of covered, but it's a thing with you, and you have.
Oh yeah, well, I grew up in Amish country in Pennsylvania, and covered bridges were. That was a daily fact of life for me.
Okay, and passing by them. Well, they're beautiful. But so, welcome, Lou. Welcome.
Thank you.
To the Whiskey Club. What's in your glass tonight, kind sir? Let's start with.
I have 2 whiskeys. I'm starting with Michter's 10-year-old rye, which is a favorite. I love the Michter's. And I will be honest, I grew up near the original Michter's in Pennsylvania, and I was unhappily predisposed to not like the interloper Michter's, the new guys, the Joe Maglioka that took it over, and I was extremely skeptical. They won me over by nothing but the quality of the whiskey. They're still sourcing, but at this point, they're in what Joe refers to as phase 2 of the program. Phase 1, they were just going out and picking barrels that they liked. Phase 2 is stuff that they have commissioned, essentially, and made to their specs. Phase 3 is going to be coming out soon. That's the stuff they're making in their own distillery in Kentucky.
How many years are they? They must be into the 5 years, right?
I don't think they want to do 5 years.
Okay.
I think they want to do it when it's ready. Anyway, the second whiskey I will be getting into a little bit later tonight is the Westward. This is a new release to their Whiskey Club members, a Tempranillo cask finished single malt. Westward is in Portland, Oregon. Again, I was kind of predisposed to not be really impressed with American single malt. And at first I was not, and it just got better. And that's true of, to be honest, that's how I feel about a lot of American craft whiskeys. I remember 5 years ago having a conversation with some other whiskey writers. We were actually in New York, sitting at a bar drinking beer. And we were all sitting around, and one of them brought up, he says, when is an American craft distillery going to make a rye whiskey that's actually good enough to drink? And, there was about 5 seconds of, oh my God. Yeah, anyway, when are they? And there we are. And you know what? Today, there's any number of distilleries that are absolutely making rye whiskey that is good enough to drink. I mean, more than just good enough to drink. Really good whiskeys. And American single malt, which I have a problem with, and we can get into that if you want later. I'd rather just call it American malt. Same kind of thing. The first few years, oh my God, I realize you have to sell this stuff, but why are you doing it? But now it's pretty good. So,
and same thing here in Canada. And the oldest one, we've got some that have been around for a while. So we've got the one, and what's the name of it? It's
Glenora.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks. And they've been around for 30 years, because I think they just put a 30 release out there. So they've been around a while. I'm not the biggest fan, but I do like them. But there are other, and we're going to talk about the name you want to give these people: microbreweries, weed breweries, weed distilleries, whatever we want. We'll talk about that, because I know you have a hate for a little bit. And so whatever they are, there's some now that we're hitting the 6, 7, and 8 year range, and
that's
they're
the
coming
magic
up pretty
range.
Well. It's really nice now for us here in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm really appreciating a lot of it. But this, going back to yours, so that's what I've got.
Nice.
So I've got the 3-chamber rye from Leopold Brothers, and interviewed him 3 weeks ago. I think maybe a month. Anyways, he's fantastic as well. Yeah,
great guy,
and really geeky as well. When you want to get geeky,
oh my God,
he's there. He'll tell you everything.
The dude reads the shit I read for work, for leisure. I just
Wow. IRS papers. Let's get into the IRS papers. And he does. He reads them for fun.
He does. He enjoys it. I mean, I do too, but in a work sense,
Yeah, he's on the front porch at 4 with his wife and just reading at that point.
I'm done working. I can read this now. Nice. So my God.
Well, I am in Alberta.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just like I will fanboy all day on that shit. That is so good.
I know that because I got a picture of you doing that. Here, hold on. This is you.
There it is.
This is your post. Yeah. And I like what you said too. Alberta Premium just put on. Holy crap! Talk about anyways, caramel, and then down. Any of you little weenies crying about 8% Canadian stuck on this 132. I love it.
So good.
I've been spying on you a little bit. No, that's not true. I've been looking or following you for quite a few years now on both
I've been out here
Facebook
for a
and
while.
Instagram.
God knows. Yeah. Yeah, that's just such a good whiskey.
It is, and side by side with the 3-chamber, it's great too. But I have another question about both of those later. We're going to get into it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the book. Just
okay.
a really quick question: how long did it take you to write?
Oh, not that long. Under a year.
Okay.
And I mean, to be honest, it was roughly the same thing as tasting whiskey. I mean, tasting whiskey, I pretty much literally just opened up my notebooks and wrote it.
Nice.
I had to do my visit to Alberta. That was one of the things I had to do for tasting whiskey because full props to Devin DeCurgamo. He was the man who really opened my eyes onto what Canadian whiskey was about. And I try to do that now because there are so many Americans that just don't understand Canadian whiskey. They see the word rye and they're like, why doesn't it taste exactly like this?
Yeah. Where's the dill pickle I'm looking for?
It's not the same thing. It's not. It's God. It drives me crazy. So it's like ice cream doesn't taste like gelato. It's supposed to be different.
And
so
you do that justice in your book. You're very nice to our Canadian whiskey in the book, and I got to thank you for that.
I have to be 100% honest. I'm very nice to Canadian whiskey because I very much like it. Excellent. And it drives me crazy that so many Americans not only don't like it but don't understand it, and almost seem to be averse to trying to understand it. That's what makes me crazy about it.
It's a bit understandable though, because we were pounding out some just, I don't know, hideous crap, I think, for probably 20,
absolutely. And
really,
unfortunately, right? That's what you were sending down here.
Yeah.
Because honestly, my great uncle was drinking it. That's the reason you were sending it. He kept buying it.
Everyone bought it. And they made a lot of money. They did.
They did. And it was easy. They hardly even had to do anything. Put a model in a black velvet dress and boom, it was sold. That was, and I honestly, I don't know if Crown Royal run ads. I don't know if they did. I think all they did was put the bottle in a purple bag.
I know, and I gotta say, I've even bought one this week. It was the winter wheat. It's this. My wife's handing it to me right now. It's it's $100, and it's got the same pretty thing on the inside, and it's a nice looking bottle. And they come out with two special bottlings every year, right? So nice presentation. But I don't usually buy Crown Royal. I like Canadian whiskey. I've been getting there, and it's mostly. You said Devon, and I had the same thing with Devon because I did 2 books with them. So I did the original one right there, that one right there. And then I did, he was our very first whiskey book club. I met him a couple times at different. So COVID started and I started that. And then I did 16 weeks of this one where we went to different distilleries all over Canada. And Davin and Blair were both there. And I still do stuff with both of them. Mostly Blair now. Every Tuesday we pick another distillery and something, but we talk about it. It's all Canadian. So you're very nice to Canadian whiskey. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
This is good. But let's get on about this book. Let's do it.
Sure.
And we're going to start with your forward. And I've got a big preamble. I got a lot here. So Bill Lumsden wrote your forward and mentioned a stage in whiskey development that I believe many of those that I know in my personal circles of whiskey, they are right now. So the stage is, and I'm going to throw a quote up here.
You mentioned this. Okay.
Here's the quotes. Boom, quote, boom. So there's the first one. There are only 2 options, really. Either you spend many years actually making the stuff, which I would love to do, or you find a document.
I love that Bill put that in parentheses, which I would love to do.
Oh no, that's mine.
I know, but yeah, wow. Yeah. Are you making whiskey when you're blending, or are you making whiskey when you're distilling? That's a question. I
think so. And I'm going to say so. Dr. Don would say he's making whiskey. Although
I think so too.
I think so.
Or if you find go ahead.
Your book covers it. And he says this is perfect, lovely, geeky, scientific detail. And this is the book for me. It's a book for him. And you focus your attention on the processes that we have already read. Like if you've read books, you've read the processes you've related to, but you mix that in, you integrate it with a description of how the flavors and aromas are being made at that point in time, which I believe is unique. I haven't read that yet. And I've read quite a few whiskey books. So that's what really brought me into the book. I love that. So we learn how whiskey makers go about creating, building, and integrating flavor. And that's what you wanted for the book. But you say, this is where I'm starting. Today's whiskey drinkers, right here, are much more sophisticated, more engaged. They want to know all they can about their chosen drink. And I want to know why you think that is. Why is there so much interest now? And is that why you wrote this book? Because of these type of people?
Honestly, I think it is that way now, largely because of, I'll say it. I mean, largely because of John Hansel starting Whiskey Fest. I think Whiskey Fest had a lot to do with that. I think Whiskey Advocate had a lot to do with Malt Advocate as it started, and then Whiskey Advocate. And I mean, by extension, I had something to do with that. And I consider that to have been one of the great gifts of my career. I was able to directly influence the voice of whiskey education for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was getting a chance to shape how people talked about whiskey, which, you know, looking back, I only realized that, you know, I was doing it, but I only realized that's what I was doing about 3 years ago. And it kind of filled me with a sense of awe. I hate to, you know, I don't want to, but I really was. I mean, I helped develop writers like Liza Weistuch, like Jake Emmon, Johnny McCormick. You know, those were people I helped bring along. Fred Minnick. I mean, and Fred says, you know, I essentially taught him how to write about whiskey.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Fred was a newspaper writer before, and he was very bing, 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 bing. I'm like, dude, stretch out, make paragraphs, you know, not sentences. And it, you know, and I think that built how we, because it used to drive me crazy that whiskey books and whiskey writing were just about like, this is this whiskey, here's how it tastes, ding, da, ding, da, ding, da, ding. This is the whiskey, this is where it's made, this place is in this town, and it has this and that. And I'm like, you know, that's not how wine writers do it. Wine writers write about the totality of the thing, the whole of the thing. And I wanted to steer whiskey writing to that. I wanted to steer Whiskey Advocate to that. And we did, you know, we started writing about things like that. And I think that, you know, that developed how people thought about whiskey. They wanted to get more than just, I smell this, I taste this, which, I mean, is absolutely a valid thing and a way to do it. But I want more than that. And I think the direction I had on whiskey writing, which, you know, I don't want to say, oh, I'm humbled by this, because that sounds like so much bullshit. But, you know, I had an opportunity and I grabbed it. And I was glad to have the opportunity. But I think that along with the whiskey festivals, especially Whiskey Fest, I mean, Whiskey Fest was really the first whiskey festival as such. And then others picked up from there. But it was the first place you could go and actually talk to the people who made the whiskey. I mean, I remember the very first one in New York. I was there. Well, I remember most of it because that was the first time I really got seriously drunk on whiskey. I'll be honest about that. I don't remember much past about 10 p.m. Okay. But up until then, I remember
those are some great hours.
Oh my God! Wow. Yeah. It was waking up at 5 o'clock, 8 blocks away, and having no idea how I got there. I remember Jimmy Russell from Wild Turkey being there and taking people by the shoulder and handing them a glass. And I'm like, this is what it's all about. This is amazing. Because, and I mean, I actually had Richard Patterson from the Dalmore complain. He was being as he often does, he's just bullshitting, complained to me about, oh, you know, the questions are a lot tougher these days and it's your fault. But that's what it is. He said, you know, when they first started in like 98, 99, they were saying things like, so this is whiskey. How old is it? And now they're saying things like, so what yeast are you using? Why are you using that? How long is it in the fermenter? You use those sherry casks. How often are you using this one? And this one, is that a first fill or second fill? Why do you use dunnage? Where are these warehouses? Are they? And he's like, they never asked that before.
Now you know you got to know your stuff. You got to know your stuff.
Yeah, you do. And the thing is, they want to know. Okay, partly I'll be completely honest. Partly they ask those questions because they want you to know that they know. Yeah, and that's how it is. I mean, I've seen.
Look how much I know, and
like you said, I've written about beer. I have a foot in both industries, and I saw this with beer geeks way before I saw it with whiskey geeks. But they both do it. But they also want to know more because they just love this stuff so much, and they want to know more about how it's made. I mean, that's why I ask. I don't ask just so I can write an article and make money. I mean, granted, that's my living, but I do it because I want to know. I'm fascinated and curious. It's such an interesting thing.
And tell me, okay, so that's the biggest difference. You're 20 years ago or 22 years ago when you're first writing for Whiskey Advocate, and the progression now, it's their knowledge. But is there something else? Because you were getting into the game kind of when whiskey was on a downward trend. You were coming in where it was coming back up. So is it now kind of what it would have been like in, I don't know, Scotland or somewhere else at the heyday of whiskey? Or you go back 120 years to Ireland when things were so ecstatic for them, when they're selling to everyone all over the world. Would it have been kind of the same thing?
If you want to come across the same kind of excitement about whiskey that we see now, you almost have to go back to the 30s. Okay. I mean, I've looked at whiskey writing through the ages. I mean, there's Alfred Barnard back in the 1880s, 1890s. Now that's really the dawn of whiskey writing, if you will. I mean, we did a panel on this, me and Noah Rothbaum, who's my editor at the Daily Beast, and David Wondrich, who also writes for the Daily Beast. Okay. Three of us did excuse me, and Nick Morgan, who, you may have heard of. We did a panel at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans about Alfred Barnard and his writing. Okay. And, that's where everything started. That's, we're all essentially trying to find something to say about whiskey that Alfred didn't already say. So
I wish I would have seen that masterclass.
Oh my God,
I feel like I've missed out a lot.
Such a good time. And the thing was, the people in the audience, we hardly get any questions because they were all just like, yes, and what? Yes, yes. And it was great because it was such a good panel. I mean, honestly, I could have just listened to Nick Morgan for the whole hour and a half. But so we did that. But then, whiskey writing essentially goes dead for like 30 years. And then Prohibition's over and people kind of get excited again. And there's some whiskey writing in the 30s. And then the war comes and just literally blows it out of existence. And nobody cares because there's so many more important things to write about. And then it doesn't really happen again. There's a little bit in the 70s. And then nothing until Michael Jackson
Malt was starting to come back. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually in the 60s and 70s, it was such a boom time that nobody wrote about it because you didn't have to. And it was a branding time, It was more about selling blends and just pushing it out the door and making it as fast as you can. There were a few things written in the United States, but they were mostly, to be honest, they were mostly fluff. Just like stuff supplied by the distillers, and you wrote the piece and you went on. It really wasn't until the late 90s that things started getting, and it's kind of interesting. I remember something John Hansel used to say, is whiskey really better than vodka, tequila, brandy? He says, well, you know what? I've never seen a Tequila Advocate magazine, except there is now. There are tequila magazines now. Hell, there's a vodka magazine now. And it's because people have gotten interested in what they're drinking. They're not just boom, boom, boom. Let me get obliterated. They want to know what they're doing. And I think that's, people ask, why did whiskey come back? Why has whiskey blown up? Why is whiskey selling so much? It's because people are interested in what they're drinking now. They want to know. I mean, the people that don't want to know, they're drinking hard seltzer, to be honest. Because it's a delivery system.
Well, and there's still cheap whiskey out there for them to drink.
There's still cheap whiskey out there. There's a whole lot of flavored whiskey, isn't there?
Yep.
So, and then I think that's what those people are drinking. But there's a lot of people who either want to drink good stuff or want to be seen drinking good stuff. And there's always those. But regardless of which, those people want to know about that stuff for whatever reason. but there's a much bigger desire for knowledge than there was 25 years ago.
Even 10 years. It seems like a big difference, really, in just 10 years for me when I started getting into it, because I'd had whiskey forever, and Ryan Coke here in Canada was a thing. As those were my teen years before, like 16, drinking that and drinking too much. And then later, when you start getting serious about it, and I think that's just when you're ready to pay a little bit more money. So wherever that is in your life where you're ready to pay a little bit more money, I think you start getting interested in it. And it becomes not a vice, but a hobby a little bit, right? Or you tell yourself it's a hobby, right? But
I remember I went out with a newspaper reporter one day. We were visiting breweries, and about the third brewery, she said, "Wait a minute. So drinking like this could be a write-off?" Like, oh yeah. I'm so glad we went out today.
I learned so much from you, Lou. Yes! Thank you. I love it. I'm getting back to the book. So I've read the book, just like, and I'm sure you've read quite a few whiskey books out there, but in every whiskey book, there's things that you learn. There's things that you've read before, but you've forgotten it, and things that you read and you think to yourself, no, I should have known that, but maybe you forgot.
Yes.
So, and I've got two parts in your book that this happened to me right away. So the first piece I noticed fits with the last category, things that I should have known, and that was the caramel coloring. I just thought it was brown sugar, and that it wasn't the barley. I didn't know it was barley ground down, but it makes complete sense because it has to be the natural flavor.
It's got to be all malt.
Yep. So that makes complete sense.
It's just like it's really just like the malt syrup that homebrewers use when they start out.
And I still thought it was still the same thing, because I use that, but for starters, for my yeast, you're mixing in.
Sure.
But I don't know why I didn't make the connection. So that was one, and I was kind of angry with myself that I didn't know that. It's like, stupid. How do you not know this? And the second piece was that the phenols are for smoking peat were locked in the husks. And for some reason, I didn't think of that. And it made sense why something comes in. You talk about the 220 parts per million phenols in the octomores, and then it's not that when it comes out, because it tastes a lot like their Port Charlotte, which is nowhere close to that.
Nowhere near.
So I'm going to ask you a question, though, because, and I don't know if this is a brewery or it's a distilling question, is no, it's distilling, because when you get into the tails, I was told the tails is what holds most of the peat. So the flavor of the smoke, the peat is, or do you, I don't know how to say this. Screw it. Doesn't matter. I learned from you these two things, and I'm going to ask you, can you remember something when you're writing this book that you were thinking, well, that's interesting? Or why didn't I know that? Or how did I forget about that? So was there something in the book that you were around that?
Absolutely. And it's something you asked about in another place. It was the POF positive, POF negative yeast. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I knew, and what we're talking about, POF is phenolic off flavor, which is kind of judgmental. So you either get the phenolic off flavor plus, which means you get it, or the phenolic off flavor minus, which means you don't. What they're talking about is two different kinds of yeasts. So, and we're going back to Todd Leopold, because he's the guy who started me on this. And Todd said, because Todd was a brewer first. He was a craft brewer, and he said he had always heard that a lot of distillers' yeasts came from the Hefeweizen yeast that brewers used, which is definitely a POF positive yeast, because you get all those clovey phenolic aromas and flavors out of that yeast. And, that's, one of the classic tropes of beer writing. Hefeweizen tastes like clove, tastes like smoke, tastes like vanilla, tastes like plum.
Banana for me.
Banana. None of that is in the beer. There are no cloves added to the beer. There's no banana added to the beer. No smoke added to the beer. It's all coming from the yeast. But, I knew that, and I wrote about it for years, but not until I talked to Todd Leopold did I find out that the reason that tastes like that is because that yeast, that particular strain of yeast, is able to digest the cell walls of the grain and get 4-vinyl guaiacol out of it, which is what is causing all those spicy aromas and flavors.
Yeah.
And I never knew that. And I mean, I'd already been writing about beer for 20 years at that point. Never came up. It was just, oh, this yeast makes this thing. And that's when I realized that MGP ryes, which are 95% rye, don't really have a lot of that spicy character. They have a rye character, but it's not the clove. They must be using POF negative yeast. And I haven't confirmed that, but I freaking well know it because it ain't there. And it's 95% rye. It's gotta be, except it isn't. So it's got to be the yeast. And that all came from literally the last interview I did for the book, which was with Conor O'Driscoll at Heaven Hill. It was the last interview I did. I got in the car, I drove home and started writing the book. And that's, for anybody who came here for book writing process, God bless you. You're a fool for coming for that. But that's how my process is. I can't start writing the book until I have everything, because I don't want to write part of the book and have it be informed by something else and go, shit, I got to go back and rewrite that. I got to know everything before I start writing. Drives my wife crazy. Isn't that right, wife?
Yeah.
No, she's ignoring me. I think she's
just part of the personality.
But that's, that's how I write. I have to know everything before I can write anything. And in this case, it was known about that POF positive negative yeast. Well. I'm sorry?
And I was going to say, you give kudos to Liz Rhodes there as well.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Liz put me on that track. So. And I have to say, I've been doing this series of video casts with Liz and with Marty Duffy, the three of us, A Sip of Knowledge, which you already put up, the one with Dr. Don. We've been doing that since May of last year. Excellent. There we are. And I have learned so much just listening to Liz. She's so bright. She does all this stuff.
She's not assertive enough.
What's that?
I need her to be more assertive with you guys and break into the conversation a little bit more. I don't think she's assertive enough. I want her
the one that always drags us back on the course, though. That's the thing.
Come back.
But the thing is, as interesting as the geeky stuff is, you need the fun stuff too. Yeah. So
why would you be around something unless you had fun?
Yeah, I think that's why we're still working after a year and a half. We've been doing this show every single freaking week for a year and a half, and it's still a joy.
You've had some great names on there. You're pulling some fantastic names.
Oh my God.
Your comes up.
The thing I love about it is that we're getting some people on there that are big names that a lot of people don't realize are big names, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah.
And until you're watching, it's like, holy shit, no, I've been following your stuff, drinking your stuff for like a decade. It's like, no, that's really good. You're
cool.
part of my weekly watching regime. So,
in that case, I can get you excited by saying we have some really cool people coming up in the next 3 months.
You always do that.
Yeah, I know. But I'm really excited. Well, for one, we're getting Nick Morgan back again to talk about his new book.
Okay, what's the new book? Or can you say?
No, it's already out. It's essentially, everything you wanted to ask about whiskey, but thought you'd be too stupid. I can't remember what the exact title is, but
no.
Yeah, it's like a very colorful,
but very basic pictures with the bottles and the bottles upside down. It's a good looking book. Yeah. I got to say that it's funny, but I am drawn to pretty pictures. So if you see,
for sure,
it's a little bit sad. But
everybody was like tasting whiskey. Everyone's like, that book is so well designed. I'm like, I had nothing to do with it, but thank you.
Thank you. It's good. Yeah. Watching you and watching Mark Gillespie every week. These are things that make me happy. I used to be Ralphie for the longest time. I gotta tell you,
Mark is the freaking hardest working man in whiskey media. Fred Minnick is on a lot, but Mark works his ass off getting these stories. He really does.
Well known, well respected, and I like the way he presents stuff too. He's a bright guy, and he just fell down. I think he hit his head, and he had to call his
oh my god, I didn't even know about that.
He missed his chair and came back and cracked his head, and
no.
so he missed the last two, so the Wednesday and Friday too. So,
wow.
But hopefully he'll be fine soon. Hopefully,
I'm
sure. And
tough.
yeah. So you're part of my entertainment, especially at the in COVID times. It's good. It's fantastic. But I do want Liz to be more aggressive. I want her to just like pound in there.
I will pass that on.
She knows so much, and when she opens
really
up,
does.
it's like tons of information. It's like, keep going. Man, that's good. Let's go back to POF Plus.
Sure.
Why would someone have a high rye mash bill, high rye in anything, it could be beer or whatever it is, and not take advantage of the flavors? I don't understand why you would pay more money for a grain that's harder to distill, right? Harder to distill, and not use it to your advantage with the yeast. And that was a question, because these guys do, right? So the Leopold brothers, they take advantage of it. Alberta Premium, every rye that I love that has that big, heavy rye flavor. Why would they not at MG, the massive place that makes all the rye for everyone that they source?
MGP.
What are they called? MGP. Thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
Midwest Grain Products.
And that's a great site. Have you gone on there just to see if you could actually make? I was thinking if I wanted to make what they would, and they will modify their recipe to anything you want.
Yep.
Barrels for whatever amount of time. Was really kind of cool. I thought that was neat. So if there are other whiskey geeks out there that you're thinking about opening up a distillery or just
have some
your
fun.
own barrel, just have fun on it.
Yeah.
So can you think of a reason why they would make that?
I can actually think of two reasons.
Okay.
So first, rye's not difficult to work with if it's all you do.
Okay.
The guys at Alberta Distillers, I was just about to say, they're pros at it. They actually have enzymes that are designed to do nothing but to keep the foaming down and keep the sticky down. So, it's just another grain for them. So if you're working with rye all the time, it's not a pain. If you're working with rye part of the time, it doesn't really pay you to like adapt everything you do to rye. So yeah, maybe a pain, but doesn't have to be. So that's one. Two, if you don't use a POF positive yeast, you get the other flavors of rye. So
more
rye
pronounced, but
would
rye
it not
is not
be
the other one, or is it just
rye
more
is
pronounced?
not just spicy. Rye has other flavors. That's the more grassy, warm meadow flavors of rye, and that's what Dad's Hat, Mountain Laurel Spirits is just over the hill for me. That's exaggerating a little bit, but they're like an 18-minute drive for me.
Nice.
My son actually worked there as a summer job one year, moving barrels.
Okay.
So yeah. Literally,
and they don't use they use the POF.
They do not use a POF positive.
Negative. Okay.
Yeah, and they've told me that obviously they put their ryes into competitions, and they said they've gotten judges' critiques back that's like, "Are you sure this is a rye? This doesn't really taste like a rye." And I think their mash bill is 10% barley malt, and the rest of it is either rye or rye malt. That's all it is. And the reason is it's because it doesn't have that POF positive yeast. So what you're getting from Dad's Hat is really you're getting the true face of rye. You're not getting, because you can use, look at me waving my hands around. God, I'm sorry. I'll try to sit on them.
Excited, man.
Yeah, I am excited. You can use POF positive yeast on wheat and get largely the same effect. That's what the Germans use it for with wheat beers. They use it for rye beers, the Rogan beer, and you get that same effect. And it's more pronounced because it turns out that rye has more of the precursors in the cell walls that create that 4VG than wheat does. But wheat has plenty of it and will create that same effect. So it's not really that rye is spicy. It's just that's what you could do with it. Rye has its own flavor. I mean, I still remember, oh God, 97, 98, talking to Jimmy Russell about rye. And I'm like, so what does rye whiskey? I mean, you've got rye in your regular bourbon. He said, but you got a lot more rye in the rye whiskey. What does it taste? And he said, well, it's like cornbread versus rye bread. And here's how young I was. When he said rye bread, I thought of rye bread that we usually get that has freaking caraway seeds in it. And I'm like, really? No, it doesn't taste like that. Right? Yeah. So now
that's a great flavor, though. I love
it. It is a great flavor. And I've had beers that had caraway in them and they were delicious.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, now that I've had unseeded rye, I get what he's talking about, because it does have that. Like I said, I think of rye like Dad's Hat makes it, where it's just rye. I think of that as a sun-warmed meadow kind of smell. Much more grassy, a very intense grassiness. I mean, there's a couple of Ukrainian and Russian markets in my area. It's just how things happen. And I get rye bread often. And and it doesn't smell like POF positive whiskey. Okay. It smells like Dad's Hat.
So what I'm going to do, because I just made a Rogan beer, and I kept the yeast
nice.
Rogan beer, and I'll make a wheated beer, like 5% barley, whatever. So 5% barley, 95% wheat, and I'll use that
yeast.
Yeah. And you're saying I should still get the same elements that I got in my Rogan beer. All right. Yeah. I want to try this. I'm going to do that.
I want to know how it comes out. Yeah.
I would love. That's good. It's a good idea.
And to get back to your original question, that is one of the things that came out of this book that just blew up my head. Yeah, literally. I mean, I remember between when I did the research and when the book came out, I went to I was asked to speak at a beer festival in Nemacolin, Pennsylvania, the Seven Springs Resort. Doesn't matter. Okay. They asked me to speak, and they said, and I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? And they're like, well, whatever you want. I'm like, I know what I want to talk about. And to be honest, about 14 people showed up, and wow, did I download on them about POF positive yeast. Yeah. Like, I know why Hefeweizen tastes that way. And I was so fired up.
14 people. What the hell's wrong with these people?
Well, they would rather be out drinking, which I can't argue that too much. Okay. All right.
There's always time for drinking after the master classes.
And it was a gorgeous day. I mean, I would have rather been outside drinking, to be honest. But anyway, okay. I mean, they were engaged. There were a lot of questions. We talked a long time, which is cool. I love that. I love when people get interested and want to talk about it, because it means that we're reaching. We're getting somewhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's good, but I am going to try that experiment.
That's a good experiment. I like that.
I think I'm going to stick on the rye questions that I sent before.
Because,
I've got it. No, I've got another quote. I've always got quotes.
I'll keep drinking rye then.
You should. Let's go American companies. So, and I want to give you kudos for this specifically, because your foresight with Alberta Premium Cask Strength, the rise in popularity, you called it. So you asked Master Distiller Rick Murphy from Alberta Premium. That's what you said. American companies like Whistle Pig are buying age flavoring whiskey in Canada and selling it themselves. Why not take that flavoring whiskey you have in stock, create a new brand, sell it yourself? And you said, I thought that was a pretty smart idea. Now, it turns out it was, right? It was a pretty damn smart idea.
I thought so.
And I think maybe, and you can tell me the response I said to you is it's not what we do around here, but I think he put something in his mind, like he was thinking about it. Because tell us about your visit there, because you said you tried a 25-year-old 100% rye, and this would have been how long ago? 5-10 years?
2013, 8 years ago.
Okay, so
Yeah,
a long time ago, way before this came out, and went absolutely nuts. And did you feel redeemed, by the way? Did you remember when this came out? You think, I was fucking right. I was right. And then I don't, you should have. I don't know if you thought that, but I would have thought that immediately. And I probably, if I had his phone number, would have said, was this me? Did I have a little bit
honestly, if it planted a seed, God bless. I'm happy. Because I've certainly done that a couple of times with beers. I don't know, but no, they brought out essentially the whole range, and we were trying through them. And we had the 25-year-old, we had the 30-year-old. I'd already had the 30-year-old. They sent me a sample of it. I still have about that much. Which
really, yum, good. Keep it. That's
25-year-old was better. Swear to God. Good. Hand up. The 25 was better.
You remember why?
Essentially what you'd expect. It was a little more lively.
Okay.
No, the 30-year-old was, I don't want to say it was tired, but it didn't pop as much as the 25. The 25 had all the great attributes of age. It was rounded. It was mellow. It was all that. But at the same time, it was like, hey, baby, still got it. Let's go.
Still got it. Huh?
That kind of shit, which nice. I hope I still have at 62, but I may not. I don't know. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You do. I'm here.
Yeah. So that was the 25 and the 30-year-old. The younger ones, that was honestly, and I say this as an American, that was the first time I had straight up Alberta premium. And I got to admit, while I was drinking, I'm thinking, why the hell are you not sending this down here? And then since then I've had and I don't know, do they even make the Dark Horse anymore? The Dark Batch?
No, they're done with Dark Horse. I bought 6 of them because they're fantastic.
I know. I've still got 2 left of my own.
That whiskey's going south. It's all going south.
Oh.
And do you remember what was in there? The 1/9 or the
Oh no, it's 1%. Just 1% sherry.
Is that what it was? It was sherry? Okay. I was thinking port.
No, it was sherry. Yeah, because I was making Manhattans with it, and it was, oh my God. Nice. They were some of the best Manhattans I've ever made.
$35 is what it was here in Canada. I'm not sure what it would have been down you.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think it was somewhere between 30 and 40. God, it was wonderful. Yeah. And and this is, we were talking about this earlier with all the whiskey I get. That was one I went out and bought. I go out and bought that. I will go out and buy Monkey Shoulder, the blended malt from Grant Brothers. Okay. William Grant. I will go out and buy when I can find it. And some people are going to be like, oh my God, you buy that? I go out and buy Cutty Sark Prohibition. It's 100 proof blended whiskey. I think that's an excellent whiskey for the price. Again, about $30. And for 100 proof, spicy ass blended Scotch, I love that stuff.
Well, yeah. And I don't know. Okay.
I'm not going to talk about the cheap, good bourbons that I drink because I don't want them to disappear. So there you are.
You mentioned Old Grandad bonded. So one, but you do this in a great context in the book. So for anyone that hasn't read the book yet, buy the freaking book, start reading.
Yeah, buy the freaking book, would you?
Pay attention to the examples at the end of each section. I really like what you did here. So you obviously put some thought into it. A great example with the Old Grandad is where you show us that a pancake and a waffle have the same mash bill. They do, but they're prepared differently. They come out differently. And you give us Basil Hayden and Old Grandad bonded as an example as to how these two things can come out. Same mash bill, come out completely different. So that's great. And but yeah, a $30 bourbon, a great bourbon. I enjoy it. My favorite cheaper bourbon though is Wild Turkey 101. I just
my God, yes.
That's
So the nice thing about that is I don't mind recommending it because I know they make a shit ton of it. So it's nothing's going to happen if everybody starts drinking it.
you know what? You're magnanimous. You want to give people things, but sometimes you hold back a bit. It's like, I don't want to tell you my favorite bottle. There's only about 5 left out there, right? That's good.
I know.
So I realize you're choosing many of these with a purpose, right? And
yes.
You're also choosing ones that everyone's tasted. So it's a purpose because you're making a point, but within the point is also the fact that you're choosing whiskeys that are completely accessible. But I'm wondering if there's any other constants in your choices other than it makes your point for you, and 2, it's accessible. Was there something else that you were thinking in those?
Are we going to be 100% honest here?
You should be.
Ask me to. Say yes. Okay. They were whiskeys that I had in the 2-month period that I was allowed to write the reviews.
Done.
I mean, you know,
okay.
Some of that. And good. You know what? A lot of authors won't tell you that, but that's what drives a lot of this shit. You know, those were the whiskeys I had. I mean, the thing is, within that, I was absolutely trying to pick what I had to be illustrative of points I was making. And I mean, some of that is, the points I was making are broad enough that you don't have to have one specific whiskey to make the point. So I could look at what I have, and right now I'm moving as I think we discussed, and I'm going through my entire. Oh my God. Inventory. Oh, I have like 500 bottles, and that's just here. That's not at the other house that I'm moving to, where I've already moved whiskeys. It's crazy.
Have you found corners that you've forgotten about? And it's like, oh damn, I forgot. I have a box.
Yeah, not really. No, I really do work all this stuff all the time. Okay. I don't want to say I know where what whiskey is and I can lay my hand on it at any time, but I know the general area where it is, and there's not really any surprise, which I got to tell you makes you really suspicious of those whiskeys who are like, oh yeah, these barrels were lost and we just found them. It's amazing. They're 45 years old. We forgot about them. Bullshit, you did. Okay? You keep records. You know they're there. Don't tell me that what they were was whiskeys you didn't want to bottle.
I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to disagree too, because I've wondered this before. If they've got 100,000 barrels, let's say, and they're supposed to taste these every year, and they have a panel, they might have 6 people that might taste them. You'll have your master blender and then all his cronies working for him and giving the notes. I don't know how they would get through them all, is my thing. And I've had this thought, and I've asked it to people in the industry, and they say, well, no, we just try them all. I just don't know how they try them all. And
okay,
Douglas
here's the thing.
Lang, we talked to them, and they have.
If they have 100 whiskeys they have to try, they'll nose 85 of them. They might taste 15.
Okay.
So
they're nosing.
I got to tell you, Dolph, I don't understand that, because I've had whiskeys that the taste and the nose, I won't say completely disagree, but you nose it and you taste it, and there's some big surprises.
I had that last.
I don't know.
We did an international.
Maybe after 20 years, there's no more surprises if you're doing it every day. Because I got to be honest, we were at Crown Royal at Gimli at the distillery, and they brought in one of their tasters, and they essentially did a comparison test. Like, is this good or is this good? Is this the one that we're using, or is this the one that's slightly off? And the guy did this, like 10 whiskeys in 40 seconds.
Really?
100%.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, because we got like more time than that. And I think the best anyone did was 80%. Because it's that 10,000 hours thing. If you do it long enough, the nose means you're not going to be surprised by the taste. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how that it works, not how it doesn't, because I know how it doesn't. It doesn't when I smell it and then it tastes different. That's how it doesn't work. I'm trying to figure out how it does work. And all I can figure is they're better at it because they do it more often.
So last night I have an international whiskey tasting, and I quote you in because I was reading the book and I said, I'm thinking that the difference when it comes to, and this one had different nose than did from a palate, and this one's from Spain. So it's a Spanish 15-year-old whiskey, single malt from Spain, which I'd never had before. So this was really interesting. But the nose and the palate didn't jive. They just didn't go. And
which makes me nuts.
And I was thinking that maybe it was the yeast that they use as opposed to other elements, because all the ones that I've noticed recently, because this summer I did an international whiskey journey, so it was all international whiskeys, and the ones that were different, that seemed different, they were brewers as well as distillers, and they were using not just brewers yeast, but and you mentioned this in the book. You didn't know why they're not using different malts, but these ones were using different malts, and these had different. It just wasn't you, but the nose and the palate on many of these, many, were off, and it might drive you nuts. But I get surprised. It drives me nuts when I love the nose and you're let down by the palate. That I don't like. But sometimes when it's weird.
The other way around.
Weird, and you're not sure what you're getting, and you taste it's like, that's great. I like that.
I like that much better than the other one. Yes.
Okay. I've been told by my wife to wrap up, and I'm looking, and we're close to the hour.
It is that time. Wow.
It is. We're about to wrap up. You know what? I'm going to ask you one last question, because this one will be fast.
Okay.
In your section, man versus machine, you talk what I think is art versus science is what I think you're talking about in there. So if I was to put art on a continuum, let's put them on a line right in front of us. I'll put art of distilling and science of distilling. Where would you say your favorite whiskeys would rank? So think of your favorite whiskeys, or what have you really liked in the past month? Because it's hard to think of favorite whiskeys. Where would those rank if you know how they're distilled? Are they kind of artistry? Or were they a lot of computerized stuff?
Wow.
Or somewhere directly in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to go directly in the middle, because I've had really good examples of both just in the last month.
Okay.
Because I know that I know that Michter's has things screwed down right to the max.
Okay.
They really, they've got probes on everything, and it works really well for them. And yet at the same time, my guys at Liberty Pole Spirits in southwestern Pennsylvania and Washington, PA, they sent me some samples of rye whiskey. They're completely unautomated. They're like seat of the pants shit. And it was all really good. So, I think it's, it's like everything else. I think it comes down to, if you're good, you're good. And if you're using techniques and processes that you're used to and getting good results, I think you're going to continue to get good results,
no matter what. All right.
Yeah.
I can go for that. It's good. It's right in the middle. I was hoping for one or the other.
I think that's true.
I want to think of it more as an art, and then I've entered in this conversation with. Well, Dr. Don and Davin, I've had these with them and said, do you think less of them because they're doing this, but this is mechanized? And where would you be 100 years ago when they started mechanizing just something else? When you're not grinding it by hand, does it make it worse because you're not grinding it by hand? Anyways, I do like the idea.
I definitely like the thing about with the automated guys where they're saying, we can make it the best way, and then we can make it that best way every time after that. But at the same time, the thing I like about the best explanation I heard for not being automated is, if you're automated, the people who are doing the work don't understand what they're doing. They're just pushing a button and hitting a mark.
Yeah. And
when they understand what they're doing, they make better whiskey. And I think that's a pretty good explanation. I like. And
I'm going to quote you in your book. I'm not quoting you because I don't know the words, but you also said they're making excellent whiskey because they've nailed down how to make the excellent. But you don't get that exceptional mistake every once in a while, right? You don't have that.
You get the band. You know, you never get above.
All right. Well, that's it. We
Golf, good time.
It was fun. I'm glad you had fun. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
So if it's all about me, I'm happy. But let's make it about you two, and we're fantastic. So here's my spiel. We're moving our conversation from this more formalized format to a more relaxed and equally engaging conversation, Whiskey brothers and sisters. Author Lou Bryson of this book right here. I got to get it. There we go. Whiskey Masterclass, the ultimate guide to understanding Scotch, Bourbon, Rye, and more will, of course, be with us. And you're going to see some familiar faces on the panel when we come back in a couple minutes. So please join us in about 5 minutes on this channel for the After Dram. If you don't want to miss a minute of it in the future, you're clicking like and subscribe and all that stuff there. And we shall see you in a minute. So thank you very much, kind sir. Cheers to everybody.
Cheers.
Slàinte, guys.